What's going on, you good humans? Welcome to guest episode 219 of Good Humans podcast with a man who is incredibly special, and you're going to be blown away by his story. His name's Hugo Toovey. So he's in the Australian Army and he's had a wild journey to get to where he is today. He survived cancer twice. When he was about to finish his training for the Army, he found a little lump on one of his testicles, which turned out to be testicular cancer. Wild journey to overcome that one, which he goes really deep into this chat. He then, when he was a little bit older and was back finally doing what he wanted to do, working in the army, serving our country, he then had the sore stomach and went and got his stomach checked out. Turned out he had colon cancer. So he's been through the absolute walls. He's still struggling with a lot of different health challenges, but he's an incredible man who's just had a beautiful baby. He has an incredible wife, and he's just been on a journey that so many of you can learn from. He has also just started a charity called 25 Stay Alive, which is all about getting health checks and really encouraging people to stay on top of all of those checks that we can do so that we're a little bit more prepared if, something really challenging like cancer or a diagnosis of an illness happens to any of us. So make sure you go check out 25 Stay Alive when you finish this episode. Go and have a look at all the work that Hugo's doing. He's an incredible man. I'm very lucky to call him a friend and very excited to continue to support him along the journey. If you want to grab a new Good Human Factory X May the Label hoodie, we're donating $5 from every single hoodie to 25 Stay Alive to help Hugo out with his journey, and I'm sure he would love anyone who can be rocking those hoodies. You can also head over to their website. 25 Stay Alive will be in the show notes if you want to donate and learn more about that. Also, my book, The 1% Good Club, comes out next week. It is so exciting to be able to get this book out to all of you legends to see what you think of it. If you go to the show notes, you can grab a copy on Booktopia or Amazon. Also, from the 1st of October, the day that it comes out, you'll be able to grab a copy on thegoodhumanfactory.com. I'm going to sign every copy that is bought on thegoodhumanfactory.com, so go check it out over there. Also, you can learn all about the wellbeing workshops that I run with corporate groups, high school groups, sporting clubs, and everything in between, conferences and all of those good things. And I run these workshops that help people develop better skills for their mental health, all backed by science, some great storytelling and techniques that people can implement from today for their mental health. That's enough from me for the intro. Let's jump into the episode. Welcome to Good Humans Podcast, Hugo Toovey. Welcome to Good Humans Podcast, Hugo Toovey. How you going, brother?
Cooper, thanks for having me, mate. I'm doing okay. Some days, some weeks are better than others. But chatting to you, mate, in my living room, so stoked to finally sit down and do this.
I know. I just met your little guy, which was so cool, Teddy. Teddy, yeah?
Yeah, Teddy, yeah.
And your beautiful wife and your dogs. And it's so cool to be invited into your living room so I could get out of the rain. It's absolutely disgusting outside here in Sydney right now. But today's a chat that I've been looking forward to for years. I think I first heard you on Dylan Friend's podcast, Dylan Buckley's, and heard your story, and I was like, holy shit, this guy's story is like wild. And from that, I think I followed you on socials and maybe reached out and kind of, you had those social media friends for a while, and we talked about the podcast, and we just hadn't really found the time. And I'd been following your journey on socials, and you've got so many ups and downs. And then about 2 months ago, as of recording this podcast, you sent me a message going, hey mate, don't know if you're in Sydney on this date, but I've just launched a charity called 25 Stay Alive, and the Sydney Men's Health Ball is raising money for us. We're the main charity partner, and I've got a seat left on one of my tables. Do you want to come? And I was like, you wouldn't believe it. I'm actually in Sydney and have that Friday night free, and I just got a really nice brand new suit from MJ Bale from a tux that I had that I did work for them earlier in the year, and I was like, I never get to wear a tux. I'll chuck it in my car when I'm driving to Sydney, and absolutely I'll be there. And I reached out to Sam Fricker, another great friend of mine, and I was like, do you want to come to this men's health ball? He's obviously a big social media creator, Olympian, beautiful guy, and you jumped on his podcast as well. So go check out your guys' episode, whoever's listening right now. When you finish this, go check out Diving Deep with Sam Fricker and Hugo. Anyway, I'll get to the end of this story. So we came to the event, and we're sitting right next to you at the table, and obviously I knew your story quite well, and you got up and delivered a keynote that was like by far the most powerful keynote I've ever seen, sharing your story, going on this journey and the importance of, getting your health checked, and just understanding health better was such an eye-opener for me. And then at that, I was like, dude, we're going to do this podcast finally. And here we are. So we're doing it. So
no, I love it. It's so interesting hearing you say that, how things things just happen, right? You're spot on. Like these days, the power of social media, you can be connected with so many people and you can admire what they're doing from afar. And I've always admired the work you're doing. And I think they're so strongly aligned in the same concept of wanting to help people, essentially. And it was so awesome that you made it to the ball, and to have you there. And we've kind of created this friendship as a result. But then to have you here now, like I said, even meeting Teddy, the dogs, being in my living room, that's kind of special. It creates like more of that real authentic feel to it. And mate, I really appreciate your support, especially at the ball. And it was, as you heard on the night, it was an emotional one for me because I think in particular, as we'll talk about, I'm still going through it and I'm still going through some pretty difficult times, but also standing up there. I've supported so many other charities and events and causes over the years, always helping other people and other people's charities, which is amazing. It's a great thing to do. But to stand up there for my first ever fundraiser and look at the 500 or so people that were all there for me and my charity was something that was really special. It was quite, that real powerful moment that I'll always reflect on. And, to have you guys there and, you went along with Sam Fricker, it's something that I'll always remember, but it's something that it's hard to explain that feeling, when you realise that everyone's there for you, supporting you, which is awesome. So I think that's what made me extra emotional on the night. But, gee, it was a super successful night. And, so glad to have had you there, mate.
No, it was so good to be there. And shout out to Step 1. I got 3 pairs of those undies and I haven't taken them off. They're so good.
Mate, love it. That's a good point. We'll talk about ways you can support me and the charity throughout. But if you like your undies and you want to wear some undies with a good message, Step 1, 25 Stay Alive. We've done a bit of a collaboration.
They're so cool. They're the best. I'd always seen ads for those Step 1. I'd never got a pair. And then you gave us a few pairs on the night.
They're good.
So good. But let's start there because people are probably going, what's 25 Stay Alive? We're going to get to know your story. But let's start with what 25 Stay Alive is because it's going to really allow us to understand as we go through your story why this is so important to you, the charity that you've just created. So do you want to explain to people what 25 Stay Alive is? And then when you finish, I'm going to tell everyone this cool little way that they can support with something we're doing.
Yeah, awesome, mate. Look, 25 Stay Alive was created through my own experiences. And one of our tagline is 25 is the new 50. And that's in a health sense where for a lot of people, they wait till they're 50, till they start sort of taking their health seriously. And you hear it all the time with, your parents when they kind of went to that age. Yeah, that's oh shit, I'm getting old. I better bloody, start looking after myself. Or I better book in to see that doctor. And, it's where you get now it's just lowered to 45, but your bowel screening kits, women get their mammogram tests. It's kind of like when you start to just go, all right, what do I need to do now? But we're sort of saying as a charity, it needs to happen well before 50 because as we know, too many young people are dying young through largely preventable diseases such as cancer. And so 25 is the new 50 for us. And what we want to set out to achieve is just really educate and empower the typical young adult with the tools, the knowledge to conduct self-exams, to know what to look out for when they're doing a testicular exam. For women, what does a breast exam look like? We live in Australia. Skin cancer is our national cancer. What does it mean when you've got that mole or freckle that wasn't there last week or last month? So a mix of being in tune with yourself, knowing you're normal, knowing any changes in your body, but then also knowing when and why it's important to see a GP. To have that follow-on to say, you know what, I'm going to go book in to see a GP, but not just for when something's wrong, to have those conversations, to have annual checkups. And it often surprises people when, the amount of people that haven't seen a GP for a number of years. And they go, well, I haven't needed to. And I always look at the analogy of a car service, right? So even if your car's running pretty well and you look after your car, 12 months goes by and guess what? You need to take it in for an annual service. Look at the car, get under the boot, have a look, change the oil. Yep, mate, we just need to fix up a couple of things here. And we need to be looking at that in the same way for our bodies. And even if you're feeling well at, in your 20s or 30s, to try get in the habit of booking annual checkups, finding the right GP. I know people are probably listening to this and going, that's all good and well, but, my bloody GP I went in there and he just kicked me out and didn't take me seriously. It's like any profession. There are good GPs and there are not so good GPs, but finding a good GP, and if you find one and you're proactive with your health and you're taking charge of your health, when something, God forbid, does happen years down the track, your bowels start playing up, you got blood in your poo, you know what to do. You're not sitting there at mid-30s, late 30s, you know, whatever, thinking, you know, I'm scared to go in to see a GP, or what the hell does that mean? I'm going to brush it under the carpet, which is unfortunately what's happening. So we're really just here to sort of raise awareness, put a spotlight on an age group that is often forgotten about.
Yeah.
And so the 25 part is important for us as a charity, and we're in early conversations with government, which is, you know, you talk about long-term visions. For every Australian, when you turn 25, you get sent an information pack. You get sent a 5-point checklist, so you know exactly what to say to your GP. And then through Medicare, you get a complimentary GP consultation based off your postcode. Cooper Chapman might have 3 GPs to choose from. He goes, I like the sound of Lane Hinchcliffe, who happens to be our principal GP. I like the sound of Lane. You go off to Lane, you bring him your checklist. The GP's are also educated, which is part of what we do. Cooper comes in with his 5-point checklist. You sit down at 25 and he goes through and tick, 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 family history. Yep, let's check a few things. Mate, all good, clean bill of health. Hey, let's see you in 12 months' time. And guess what? 12 months comes around, you get sent your reminder. No different to your tax return. Shit, ADO, I've just messaged me on MyGov. I've 4 weeks overdue for my annual checkup with Lane. And you have that for the rest of your life. And you could imagine if it just becomes second nature, we will literally reframe the conversations around health, starting at 25, being the new 50, for the rest of your life. You are having these conversations. You can imagine how many preventable diseases, illnesses, things that it will pick up, lives that it will save. So we're thinking big. We've got a long-term vision for what we want to achieve. We're in the early stages, but I'm excited about it, mate.
Mate, well, thank you so much for sharing. And anyone listening, we will catch back up to 25 Stay Alive at the end of this chat. But if you want to support, head over to their website. It'll all be in the show notes. You can donate on the website directly. You guys have just dropped some merch. As this episode comes out, I'm pretty sure we would have just launched. Hopefully, haven't sold out yet. Hopefully, we have sold out.
Good problem to have.
A special collab hoodie with the Good Human Factory and May the label, this awesome girl, Paige, who's collaborated with us. And $5 from every hoodie goes to 25 Stay Alive, and $5 from every hoodie goes to Lifeline. So stoked I could support. Not going to be heaps of money, but mostly to help raise awareness and just hopefully get that message out there to people to go and get checked. After the health ball, actually, I went and got a skin check because, I'm a surfer. I was in the sun my whole life, and I hadn't got one for like 2.5 years, which I know isn't great, but I got one and I actually got something cut out of my back. It wasn't cancerous, but it was like this cyst that was like sore, and it wasn't a cyst, it was something else. But so I had to get that cut out of my back. But to be honest, I'm like, I haven't seen a GP in years, but I do through my work go and get blood tests to like give to functional medicine doctors for the podcast. So I'm like, all my bloods are looking good, but I definitely I actually spoke to another friend who had an addiction problem, and he just got out of rehab. He's been sober for like 2 years now, or 2 years. And he got a colonoscopy and he had all these polyps. So you can probably talk more into this. And he was like, because of like heavy drug use, heavy alcohol use through his 20s, it means you're far more susceptible to this. So if you're someone who, is in your late 20s, early 30s, you've been into your partying, you've had anything going on, there's so many health checks that we just overlook, which, we will catch up in your story.
For sure, mate. And I'm stoked to hear that you got checked, and that's kind of what we're about. We're trying to simplify it. We're not here to scare people to think, God, I'm going to have bowel cancer, my bowels are playing up. But we just really want to simplify it and make it normal chat. To say that, Cooper had a skin check. How was that, mate? Yeah, I had this weird cyst cut out, but I'm all good.
Yeah.
How did you feel for doing it? It was a lot easier than I thought.
I fainted.
Don't go in. It's the worst experience ever. But and even like you said, the colonoscopy or the taking the screening kits, not to panic if you've got blood detected in those screening kits, or if they detect any polyps. And we can chat about what that looks like. But we don't want to scare people. We just want to encourage people to firstly know they're normal, and if something just doesn't feel right, instead of, as we'll talk about, putting off that little lump on your right testicle, actually going, you know what, that shouldn't be there. I heard Hugo and Cooper chatting on the potty. I'm going to go off and see my doctor. That's plain and simple what we want to do.
Absolutely, and that's what this conversation, I'm sure, is going to really inspire people to do through your really challenging story. I mean, forewarning, Hugo's had cancer twice. do you say beat it twice?
Yeah, look, I have.
You're
I
going
have
through it still. The challenges, the post
the
complications.
the post, mate. But yeah, I do like to say, look, I have beaten 2 bouts of cancer. We'll talk about.
Yeah.
But yes, very much facing the aftermath. But yes, I've beaten them, which is a good thing.
Just a bit of that was the forewarning. So this is why this conversation is so important and why I preluded with go and get checked. If you didn't get to the end of this podcast, I'm glad we started with this. If someone's, only time poor and just listens to the first half, I'm glad we got that in at the first half because we will get back to it at the end. But what I normally start with is, what are you grateful for right now, today in life?
It will sound simple enough. You just met the little guy. So grateful for my son, Teddy. And I think I underestimated what being a father would do to me as far as the boost it would give me on a almost daily basis at the moment. And that's something that I'm grateful for. Waking up in the morning, had a rough night, him coming in like this morning, giving me a bit of a hug. There's nothing really more that can give me a boost at the moment. I'm always grateful for my wife and what she does and supports me. But yeah, my little son, my little mate who you just saw, who greeted you at the door.
He's playing with it, holding the dog's tail, getting dragged around.
Holding Rupert's tail. He's just a bundle of energy, and it's hard not to, sometimes just to take a step back, strip it right back. Right now, I'm sitting here chatting to you. I've got a healthy son upstairs. He gives me such a boost, and that's what I'm grateful for. And that, just even saying that now, that little escape, that little distraction is sometimes what you need.
Yeah, you can hear it in your voice and see it in your face when you say it. It's just like you can, and because I know parts of your story, you can just understand how much it means to you, because I'm sure there was times through your story where you thought there's no way I'm ever going to be a father and get to have that experience. So to be conscious and grateful of it is so beautiful. So let's get to know your story. Talk me through. Let's talk up until high school. What was life like as a kid? You got a twin brother. Tell me about childhood, where you grew up, what was life like, family life, what sort of values were instilled in you. Let's talk up until high school.
Yeah, mate. So twin brother Max, shout out to Max. He's living in LA, so unfortunately don't get to see him often, but we at least chat every couple days.
There right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There you go.
He's going to Burning Man tomorrow.
Oh. I don't know if Max is going to Burning Man. He did see Rufus to Soul a couple of days ago somewhere. Shit. So I feel like that stuff happens over there all the time.
Yeah, that's so cool.
But we're very close, and we were growing up, and I think, you've got 3 sisters, so you don't have the brother relationship, but you've still got the sibling relationship. And I think having a twin brother especially, like, it's your best mate growing up. We were always very fortunate in having a great childhood.
Where'd you grow up?
In Adelaide.
Adelaide,
so
South Oz.
Grew up in Adelaide, born and raised. My wife Amber, her family's all in Adelaide, so we will move back to Adelaide at some stage just because we love Adelaide, but all our families there support, the kid and stuff. So the kid being Teddy. I've never said the kid before. Support us, support Teddy, but having family support means a lot. But yeah, just great memories growing up as a kid.
Any other siblings or just a twin brother?
Older sister Millie. She's got 2 little ones, George and Mabel. So even seeing when Teddy goes back and hangs out with them, it's just I love that, cousins playing together and growing up together. So we're a very close family. Mum and Dad aren't together. These days they've been separated for a long time, but we're still, even they've got an amicable relationship, which is awesome. So we've just got a very close family. In fact, Dad's actually getting married at the end of the year, cool. which is awesome. So, and that's back in Adelaide. My brother will be there with the joint best man. So we're looking forward to that. Very fond memories of. I think it's not until you reflect on it when you become a mature adult and then a father yourself, where you look back at it and go, geez, we were pretty lucky. We went to a really nice school in a nice area. We went on great holidays. Our parents, was to sit at the dining table and how are your days and TV off. And you look back at those little things that you probably take for granted. Mum making fresh sandwiches and lunches every day. And as kids, you're like, oh, I've got a fresh sandwich. This sucks. My mate's getting $10 to get a pie and a donut, which you look back at it. It's like, how good is that? That you had your parents. So that sort of stuff, I look back at more being like, how good was that? But I did have health challenges as a kid, and they were gut-related challenges, and they do think that was largely one of the big reasons that did increase my risks of getting bowel cancer. and we can talk about that. And when I was younger at school, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, but then they weren't certain because back then it wasn't as clear to how you can detect these things. Crohn's disease is like an irritable bowel disease. It's a autoimmune disease. It's incurable, but you can treat it to be in remission. Essentially, I always had gut issues as a kid.
Brother have any health issues at all?
He never did. And so we don't know, like we had a trip to Bali that mum to this day thinks that, the old Bali belly and parasite sort of bug.
Maybe a parasite when you're really young.
Mum thinks that it could have linked to it. We'll never know. There's no point sort of
speculating.
Simple fact is I had a bad gut. And so I do have memories as a kid having a pretty bad gut. I couldn't control bowel movements at school and mum would have to pick me up, and I was always the smallest and skinniest bloke because naturally it impacted my puberty and growth and development. So I guess all the stuff I've gone through as an adult, I've kind of experienced that even in my childhood years that a lot of people actually don't even know about when they hear my story. And when I deliver keynotes or whatever, I don't have time to talk about the weeds of childhood. But to be honest with you, I did have a pretty traumatic experience with my health as a kid.
Is there any particular moment that you remember as a kid that was quite traumatic? Or?
Yeah, look, I do. And that's, as a kid, you can imagine you're very insecure. And I remember not being able to control my bowels. And this would have been like, no, I'm not talking young. I'm talking like, year 8 sort of age, where it's like the most vulnerable age of
when you eat food and you'd be sitting there and you
for sure. And I'd literally be like, I can't control my bowels, I can't make it to the bathroom, and you've just shat yourself, and then like all your mates around you don't know, and you've had to like somehow tactically like make your way to a disabled toilet somewhere, try and clean yourself up, dispose of the like there's sort of things I did multiple times. And I've got a few, like, it's funny how there are so many things that you can't remember that happened relatively recently, and then there are always those traumatic experiences in your life that you remember the details of, like the old gym I'd go to and the little secret bathroom that no one knew about, and how many times I'd have to use that, and if it was really bad, having to like subtly call mum and she would pick me up around the side and then call the this sort of stuff that, to be honest with you, none of my mates even knew about because I got very good at like hiding it. Even in a video store once, I remember this when it happened in a video store, and I was with my brother and my dad, and I thought, oh shit, literally. And I with the old school Blockbuster days, how good that was.
I had
like
one right near my house.
It was so good. It was like an outing, and you get 2 of those, and you read the blurb.
One that's only overnight, one that's a week.
And then like, Tuesdays was always the discounted day or whatever. Now it's just almost too easy.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're at Blockbuster, and I remember I just had one of those accidents where I just thought, oh God, and then we went in the car, and even my brother and dad didn't know because that's how much I would keep it hidden. It was really only my mum, and I remember sitting in the car vividly, back left seat, and I was just like sitting there, and they thought I just, dropped my guts or whatever, and they're like, geez, mate, bloody hell, Hugo, and like kind of just turning it into banter, which you would. And I remember just putting the window down, just sort of sitting there, and I got home just so upset to mum. And, they're things that, once again, it's not until I reflect on it and think that, that's quite traumatic for a young, vulnerable, early teenager. And then, my mum then having to be that person to kind of look after me back then. But I guess it's crazy to think this big surgery I have coming up is to do with getting this permanent bag, and the bowel issues and the constant challenges that I've had. I was even saying to Bor offline, I've currently got this sort of seat and drain in that kind of drains some stuff out. You have to wear like pads and little adult diapers and stuff. And it's like I'm doing that at 33, and it stemmed right back to when I was a kid. And you kind of look at those moments and think, one thing it does teach you, I guess, is you get used to it. It doesn't make it better, but naturally, people always, when they say, the work that you do, like when you come across resilient people, like you're so resilient, it's like,
don't have a choice.
Yeah, you don't. And like, that's the honest truth. It's like no one sets out to I'm going to take this path.
Yeah.
You're forced into this position, and it's made me resilient, and that's helped me overcome a lot of these challenges I'm facing now.
Yeah.
But it's not like I've chosen to be resilient.
Yeah.
I'd rather not have gone through it. Yes, it can bring good characteristics and traits to have.
Yeah.
But So it's interesting you ask that, because often I don't talk about the childhood stuff because it's so long ago, but it's becoming more relevant now that I'm a dad, and to think about in the years to come.
Yeah.
If Teddy had, God forbid, touch wood, he never does, but had similar sort of stuff go on, that would take me a lot as a parent.
Yeah. I can imagine it'd be tough on your parents. Did it from those moments you ate and stuff? did you get it under control at all, or did the doctors
I
help,
did.
or talk me through the end of high school? Did you get a bit of a and then we'll transition from high school to what you did after.
I did. I saw specialists and doctors. I remember it was just the go-to, and eventually I did treat it enough with different steroid drugs. And looking back on it, what I do now,
diet that it doesn't.
For sure, it would have been some form of bowel disease. There can be one called indeterminate colitis, which they're never quite sure, but it was definitely some form of bowel disease that was treated eventually with the right medications and the steroid and the concoction of drugs.
Yeah.
And it did get to a stage where I wasn't having the accidents. I had semi-normal bowel movements. I could absolutely manage.
Yeah.
I eventually started, putting that weight on and developing as you do in those teenage years. Eventually it got under control, treated it, graduated. And then from that point on, never really bothered me again. Here and there, sensitive gut, but not really until
so 10 years almost.
Later on, when I obviously, as we'll talk about, had these bigger bowel problems, which, looking back on it, they think one of the big reasons to increase your chance of bowel cancer is 10 or more years of untreated inflammation in the gut. Inflammation we know is not good.
Yeah.
If you don't treat it, it can fester away and cause not so good polyps, which can turn cancerous. And that is a big risk factor. And often, once again, not scaring people, but if you're kind of listening to this and you're one of those people that have been just putting up with a bad gut and having inflammation, we got to get on top of that. You got to treat it, because if you let it, just fester away, that can increase your chance of getting things worse, like bowel cancer. And for me, that's without doubt. Yes, a lot of specialists and doctors and people have put it down to bad luck, which, as you'll hear shortly in that part of my story, it is a lot of bad luck, but there is also something that increased the chance of that bad luck of getting the bowel cancer.
Yeah. Talk to me about finishing school, what you thought you were going to do after school and what you did do.
Yeah, I was always a bit lost in direction of school, I think, is the best way to look at it. I'm interested to hear. I know you're a pro surfer, and I don't know if that was early days what you always wanted to set out to achieve, but for me, I didn't have that clear direction, and I think what made it a little bit harder was my twin brother, who we just spoke about, always did. He wanted to get into business and study that, and eventually be an entrepreneur and have his own business and make lots of money.
He's doing that now in LA,
and he is, he's always been driven. Even when Dad told him to study Chinese when everyone was studying Latin and German, and Dad said, no, you want to do Chinese because if that's going to potentially increase your chance of down the track. And so he was the one who did Chinese in year 12. And anyway, he had a bit more of that direction. I was always smart enough. I got very high grades, the mid 90 ATARs, TRs, whatever you call them, whatever it's called now. But it didn't help the fact that it was almost irrelevant because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I remember I got accepted into law commerce at Adelaide Uni, and I put that down because I thought that that's kind of what I needed to do, right? Everyone, they study, and the higher you get, you might as well do something that's hard to get into.
Yeah.
Then you get a huge HECS, and you study for 3 or 4 years, however long it is. You live with mum and dad if you're in a position to do so, and that's just kind of what you do, right? Even if it's not really where your heart is or where your passion is, it's just kind of what we're told growing up.
Don't waste your...
Yeah, don't wait. You don't go on a gap year. Don't do it. Yeah. You want to study hard, and you want to get into the things that will set yourself up and make the most money. And that's kind of how we're programmed. But for me, it just didn't sit right. And then it wasn't until, and I think my dad finally sort of caught on to that it's not what I wanted to do. And he came across this Australian Defence Force Academy where it's like your Sandhurst, you go over in Canberra, and it's this quite prestigious academy where you train to be an officer in the Army or Air Force and Navy, but then you also get paid to study. So you're still doing a degree, which my dad thought was important, but then you're also doing this other, pretty out there, basic training, learning to be a soldier. And he came across this, went to an open day. I liked the idea of it, and I think what appealed me most was the whole concept of being thrown in the deep end. And to do something different. I think I'd always kind of, those years we just spoke about, in a weird way, maybe I look back on it like they're living in my twin brother's shadows in a way. He was always the better footballer, always bigger, that sort of mentality, the
drive for business.
The drive for business.
With the health problems.
Yeah, he didn't have all the health things. He was going off he got accepted into Bond University at Queensland on a scholarship and all this sort of stuff. I think for me, it's like I felt like maybe if I did something just completely different, it would
Great
just
nice
set me on
story.
my own path and just separate me from just like still living with mum and dad and always thinking like, oh, my twin brother's living in Goldie, living the life of a bond student. That was probably looking back, and I've never actually said that out loud.
Hindsight's an
But
interesting
I think that's
you can only connect the dots looking back, not looking forward.
exactly, mate. I think that's it.
Yeah.
And then I think the longer I went along, the further I went along in the training, the closer mates that I made, and they're my best mates today, and a couple of them are grooms at my wedding, and the things that I learnt and the stuff that I was doing and the lifestyle I was living, I quite liked it, and I thought, this is pretty cool. Yeah, and I probably needed that
structure. Yeah,
and I remember I thought, if I last 2 years, I'll be stoked. But this is not a forever thing for me. I'm just gonna just give it a crack, and then if I can move back home, so be it. And then 2 years goes by, 3 years, you graduate the Australian Defence Force Academy, you go across the road to Duntroon. You start kind of getting through it, and you think, hang on, geez, I'm actually going to graduate as a young lieutenant. Like, I did not think that was going to happen.
So lieutenant's like a foot soldier, yeah, like a
lieutenant's
paramilitary, or no?
No, so lieutenant's it's an officer. So it's like
Okay.
I did officer training. So you
Okay, so
you do basic recruit training as a soldier,
Okay,
and like
so-
private,
and then
corporal,
you-
sergeant,
Yeah.
which they're the driving force in what operates
Private,
an army,
corporal,
really.
sergeant. I'm trying to work out.
Warrant
You
officer.
always yeah. So what's the lowest?
So private.
Private's
Yep.
not lowest, but
Entry level, non-commissioned
private.
officer, you're a private. And then you become a lance corporal, corporal, sergeant. This is the non-officer pathway.
Yeah.
And then you become a warrant officer. And then, there are some, amazing senior warrant officers who almost like, it's such a weird thing. They have to call even a 1 day out of Duntroon lieutenant, sir, even though they've been in for 40 years. It's
and
just,
they've gone that route, but then
you still have to go,
ranked higher.
you have to go, sir, even though, you need to leverage off their experience. You've been an officer for 1 day, but you're still technically how the hierarchy works in the military. So it's a super interesting thing. You're a 22-year-old.
So you got to salute to anyone who's a higher rank than you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's kind of and I remember there was times when you'd day one.
Can you tell by what, like, their logos on their shoulder?
Yeah, for sure.
So that's how you can tell if someone's a higher rank than you.
Yeah,
based
exactly.
On the logos and
so
stuff.
Or
the
lieutenant's got either, it depends what you're in, the cams
Yeah.
or the polys, but lieutenant's the 2 pips, and then captain's 3, and now I'm a major, which is like a little crown.
Yeah, wow.
And above major you become lieutenant colonel, and colonel. I won't be in for that long. I didn't think I'd be in for this long anyway. I've been in for
major now in the
15
Australian
years.
Army.
I'm a
That's
major,
cool.
and it surprises people that I'm still full time, but I've got very flexible work with my health.
And your roles. Different
My
to
role's very different. It's very much in the welfare space.
Yeah.
I look after sort of the soldiers with medical issues, which is so strongly aligned to what I've gone
of
through.
course.
So I enjoy it, but it's becoming harder and harder to balance. And in the next 12 months or so, I'll probably look to transition out. But like
charity, young kid.
yeah, but look, it's been an amazing career, and I'll always be grateful with the support, the support that they have provided me. And I can only, if this is my experience, I know there's other people and
Those that don't have the
soldiers
same,
that
yeah.
have got medically discharged with injuries and stuff that
Yeah.
are a bit bitter. But for me, I've been supported.
Spoke to a guy about that actually a few weeks ago. I was doing a workshop down in Victoria, and a guy who worked in the worked as a fitness instructor said something. He failed like a health test and then like couldn't get back in, and he's like, "Oh, I want to get back in," but I was just like, there's so many politics and unique situations to everyone, but it's so nice to hear yours. It's a really positive story, because I've actually had another guest on who was sexually assaulted and then bad trauma from it when she was like 18 in the army or no, one of them.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's really nice to hear a positive story from, the military, and not to say, there's good and bad in all situations. But
Mate, I'm a big advocate. Like even in every keynote I give, I'll always talk about my time in the army. And look, largely that stemmed part of the fact I lost my best mate to suicide at second year ADFA, and unfortunately second year ADFA, and he was in the Navy, but you're still part of ADFA, and he was next door in that same division, and tragically he took his own life, and he was 22, which is really sad. So I talk about being a pallbearer at second year ADFA, being 20, military funeral and all your polys slow marching down, hundreds of people. It's not something you expect to do, but it was my first exposure to suicide, and it wasn't until years and years later when I've gone through really bad bouts of depression and struggled a lot with my mental health that it put a bit of a spotlight on what Pete and many others experience when they're suicidal, and the pain they're in, and they're not thinking rationally. And you know, I've been in positions where I've been in pretty dark places where I necessarily haven't really wanted to get out of the medical things I was going through, and it's an important part of my story. And I always talk about Pete because it's many years ago now, but his, you know, as we know, by talking about people, memories live on, and also, you know, his legacy lives on. So I think that's, I always talk about him, always talk about the military. They've been very supportive, and I'm grateful for that.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Now, can you tell me about when you found a lump on your balls?
Yeah,
because this is an important part of the conversation. I think a really important bit of education for, you know, to be honest, this podcast has like 60% women listeners, but I'm sure many of those women have a brother, a dad. I'm sure they all have a dad. Hopefully they're still alive, or, you know, a son or a friend who's a male. So we'll start there, because we will talk about women-specific stuff as well, maybe a bit later. But tell me, for you, what stage you're at in your life. Health was finally feeling like you're in a pretty good spot. You're a couple years into the army, found something that feels right for you. And then, tell me about testicular cancer.
It's an interesting one, because I know so much about cancer now, of course, with everything I've gone through. But back then, the only thing I knew about cancer, I never really had any family history of it, was kind of what you saw in the movies. And for me,
falls out,
for me, it was, you have to be really unwell before, you know, you get diagnosed. Often you're a bit older, and it's for people who are sick and old, and not for, you know, someone who's about to graduate as a lieutenant in the Australian Army who's fit and healthy. You know, that's kind of my perception of it back then. And I remember vividly, once again, we go back to those moments in life you remember, and I remember vividly calling my dad. I was in the final 6-month stretch before I did graduate. So 4 years of training, which is a lot of training. You're almost at the finish line. It was mid-June 2013, and I was 21, and it was the 18th of June, which is my dad's birthday. And I remember clear as day calling my old man to wish him happy birthday. And that's when I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to say it. I put it off for this long. I said, Dad, random, side note, I've got, and I kind of was awkward saying it. I've got this lump on my right testicle. Like, is that normal? I don't know. Figured Dad would know. Dads know everything. He's got testicles. He would tell me if it's normal or not. And he just, I remember said, mate, you know, how long's it been there for? Have you gone to a doctor? And I said, well, I don't know, but look, at least 6 months. Sort of earlier that year, I noticed it was there, and I just kind of pushed through army training, and you're busy and you're going out field, and I was fit, and I'm just like, you know what? It's just a benign cyst. It'll disappear. It never did. And then he said...
Can you explain what it felt like, just for any other man standing there? Like, how do you self-check for it? What did it feel like? Yeah,
sure. So it's always... The best way to describe it is picture or even feel one if you've got it in your freezer, a frozen pea. So that's the size of it. It's hard. It's not sort of soft. It's, you know, doesn't have a squeeze. It's literally rock hard. So like a frozen pea. Mine was sort of connected or attached to the right testicle. So it wasn't like loose floating around. It was part of the testicle.
Off the side of it,
hard lump that just sat there. It didn't get bigger. It didn't get smaller. It didn't hurt. I just knew it was there. And how I knew it was there was largely due to post having a shower. So often everything hangs low. And that's when the medical advice is the best time to check it.
Hot shower.
Hot, steamy. You know, the balls are hanging low, and that's the best time to have a feel of the left. And they say to use your thumb and your finger and kind of just move around the testicle, and just kind of, it's meant to be sort of smoothish. You shouldn't have any like, oh, what the hell's that lump? It should be relatively smoothish. And left, right. And for me, I remember every time I'd get out of the shower and you'd dry yourself and you'd do this, I'd kind of every now and then I'd be like, oh, fuck, it's still there. And then every now and then, you know, it's cold in the army in Canberra, things shrivel up, and I kind of go, oh no, it's not there anymore, but it's kind of just all shriveled up, and then I'd have a shower, the next night it's there again. So that's the best way to do a self-exam, left and right, hot and steamy, after a shower. You know, do this every few months, 6 months, whatever. And if you notice anything and you think, well, hang on, I heard Hugo and Cooper talking about that. That doesn't feel right. Or even if you're listening to this now and you are a bloke, or if you're a female and you know your other half hasn't had a check for a while. I say turn into a bit of a
Fill their balls.
turn into a date night.
Yeah, I'll tell my partner we're going to do.
Make it romantic. Just be like, all right, let's set this one up. Hugo told that I don't necessarily have to do it. We can turn it into a bit of a game here.
I love it.
Check it. So you can turn it into a bit of fun, and then often they're the ones that, it's like the partners are often the ones that go like, Cooper, what's that on your neck? Has that always been there? Oh, you're right. Well, on your back. And same thing down there.
Yeah.
And for women, like the breast exams and stuff like that, if you, notice anything in your partner or whatever, don't be shy to say, is that always been there? Like
doing breast exams every night.
Yeah.
I'll be a bit more curious.
Yeah, exactly. Just, turn into a medical exam.
Yeah.
So I think it's having those chats amongst each other if you do have a partner.
Yeah.
And it's important to just normalise that and to not think it's a weird thing. And I get it. You don't go to the pub and sit down with your mates watching the footy and go, lads, how the testicles look. Like talking about nuts, it's a bit weird.
Time and place.
But like if there's an occasion,
it doesn't have to be every day.
No,
once every 6 months.
Exactly. Ask or talk to someone. And
did you listen to that podcast with Cooper and Hugo? Like, or did you?
Yeah. Exactly. So just find the timing. And for me, it was speaking to Dad on the phone. I didn't want to ask my army mates. It felt a bit, I don't know, soft. I thought.
So what did it feel a bit of fear being in the army that you're about to graduate? It's like, am I not going to get put through graduation because I've got you were saying there's people get medically discharged. Was there any of that subconscious maybe as well that you didn't get checked? Because I'm sure in the army there's probably doctors and stuff that you can go and see really easily.
And that was the what do you do? I remember my dad thinking, mate, go to the bloody doctor. It was where I remember Longtown Company, where my room was, having this phone call, the medical centre and the RAP, the sick parade where it was probably 50 metres from my room. And you could literally go in the morning for no other reason than you're at sick parade. What's wrong with you? I don't feel well. You see the doctor. And I could have done that. I could have done that exact thing for months and months and months. I didn't. I think largely was the fact that you're probably right. I didn't want it to impact my training. I was right at the pointy end. I think I did have that sense of fear that, in the back of my mind, hang on, what if this is something bad? I don't really want to know. And I think a lot of men especially have that fear component on why they don't do, screening kits, why they don't see a doctor, because deep down they're almost scared about what they're going to find. And for me, I think that was part of it. And then it wasn't until my dad, that was almost the, hearing your old man say, mate, go to the bloody doctor. I needed that. And I went across to the doctor. He was all pretty calm about it. Often people build up this thing about doctors and GPs, but more often than not, they've seen everything. Nothing's going to surprise them. And I remember he just said, no worries, mate. You just drop your dax for me. And he just had a feel around and went, oh, yep, I can feel that. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, you've got a little lump there. Yep, here's a referral. Head off to X hospital in Canberra, have an ultrasound, and they can just see what's going on. And I thought, okay, it's pretty easy. That afternoon, drove out to got the ultrasound. The person giving it can never sort of say oh shit, that's not good.
Yeah.
But I just remember seeing she was a bit like, I could just feel that something wasn't right. And then she said, oh look, the specialist will review it and you'll get a call later. And I thought, okay. Went back to my room. And then it wasn't long after, they obviously speed things up when it's something like cancer. It wasn't long after when my GP got the results back from the specialist. And
that day or next day?
That day, yeah. And the GP called me back in, and then he sort of said, yep.
So you went to the GP in the morning to the thing on the arm on your back with the
back
GP.
Being told, and he sort of said, look, it looks likely that it is testicular cancer. You need to have some follow-up scans to determine that. And I think it was the next day I had a CT scan or something to see if it spread. And that was, once those results came back and they saw that the cancer had spread through the lymph nodes and it started to spread up, that was when I saw the urologist. And then, we're having very different conversations about, surgery to remove the testicle. He was, saying, we got to talk about what chemo looks like, follow on bigger surgeries. All these conversations, which in a matter of
48 hours,
48 hours, you're a 21-year-old, fit and healthy, got your whole career ahead of you, your whole life ahead of you, and in 48 hours, you basically be sitting there being told that you've got cancer that spread through the body, you've already booked in for a couple of days to remove the testicle, we've got to start chemo as soon as possible, blah, blah, and you're sitting there at 21 thinking what the hell is going on? So that was a lot to take in because I've never had any experience of cancer, like I said. And for me, it was processing it at a young age and thinking, firstly, hang on, I'm feeling pretty good. So what we see on the TVs and movies aren't always factual. The fact is I was feeling good, passing fitness tests, going outfield, and I had cancer that was spreading through my body. You would typically think I was unwell, right? It's just how it worked. And the other thing was thinking, God damn it, why did I put off that lump for so long?
Would have it changed?
For sure, the cancer wouldn't have spread.
The cancer wouldn't have spread if you got it when you first.
If I noticed it and I went in, I still would have probably had to have the surgery to remove the testicle, but that would have been it. I wouldn't have had the chemotherapy and the years of treatment and recovery and the retrobacterial lymph node dissection, which at the time I didn't think would be the first of many open abdominal surgeries, which I've got another one coming up. But that was the first of many, opening me up, taking all the abdominal lymph nodes out, all these sort of things, all because I put off that little frozen pea-sized lump. So it would have been very different, which is why that was my first exposure, learning the hard way, the importance of early detection.
And that's exactly, I mean, I get goosebumps thinking about how many people and how many lives you're going to save with 25 Stay Alive.
Yep.
And it should be 21 Stay Alive.
Wow.
Almost. Your story is very unique. Talk to me about getting told you got to get rid of one of your family jewels. How was that as a young man?
Yeah, look, at the time I was a bit sort of vulnerable, but looking back on it now, like it's an amusing moment in my life for the main reason that I probably didn't realise how unique the situation was. So I was 21, just going through all of that, and then I remember it was this big office, probably as big as this sort of living room space, and I'm by myself in Canberra, didn't have my parents with me, and you're kind of sitting there, and this older urologist was like, right, mate, now before we talk about next steps, I've got to ask you, do you want a fake testicle? And I remember thinking at the time, it was almost a bit like, you feel a bit awkward. Like, what do I say? And I thought, I guess so. Like, is that what people do? And he's like, yeah, look, it's some yes, some no. Some like to choose the uni ball. Some like to match it up. It really depends on you. And I'm like, are they expensive? And he's like, well, Army will cover it for you. I'm like, okay, that's the first thing I don't have to worry about. Thanks, Army. Look after my fake nut. But then when I said, like, yep, let's lock it in, I probably didn't expect what was happening next. And I remember he sort of went back to his desk area and he kind of pulled out this little like box, little briefcase, like it kind of flipped open and it's got like these molds, like it's like, someone's trophy cabinet, like the different molds and shapes and sizes of fake testicles. And I remember like you're going through it and like he was probably sitting there and he was just like staring at me, just like looking at my reaction. I remember sort of the first couple didn't really do it for me and I got the third one along, just had this feel to it. It's like, when you pick something up and you just go like a golf club and you're like, yep, this feels right. And I picked this up and I just looked up and he was like waiting for my reaction. You could tell it like was his favourite probably. And I remember thinking like, yeah, let's go with this one. And it had this real bouncy texture. It just felt good. And he said, that's one of our most popular choices, Hugo. And I'm like, okay, I picked the right one. And I said, let's go with this. And he's like, great, thank you. And he's writing down these forms. And he's like, now what size do you want? And I'm like, I don't know, like you've already checked him out. Match it up, pretty decent size, not massive, but that's okay. And he's like, well, some blokes actually choose to have, when they're in that position, to have a bigger one. It's almost maybe they're overcompensating for their small nuts. They're like, this is my time that I can finally get the bigger nut. And I said, a bit of symmetry. And little did I know that particular part of my story, getting that fake nut, which now I've still got the same one. I've always thought about, wonder when I can upgrade, like the new models come out, you go in and get a shiny one or one with like, rugged edges or something that, there might be a time. I don't know how long they last for, to be honest. I think it's decades and decades. But I didn't ever think that at that time it would turn out to be my infamous party trick, but something that's generated so many conversations. And it's been a great icebreaker. It's been a great way to talk about testicular cancer. I've had other testicular cancer patients and survivors that have come up to me afterwards sharing their experience. And even just recently, happened in Ballarat at a talk I was at, a guy came up and he had the uni ball. He's like, I never got the option of getting the other one. And I'm like, mate, be proud of the one, Sure, you've got your own party tricks. And it's created so many great chats. Yeah. And for those wondering, the party trick is... Maybe we can do it afterwards, Cooper. You can get involved. But the party trick is my mates, usually after a few drinks, as you can imagine, they build up a bit of a tally on how many they get right and how many they get wrong. It's called real or fake. So essentially I pull it out. It's either the real one or the fake one. and visuals only, you have to guess, no, that is 100% the fake one. You can't touch it. It's visuals only. And people kind of, write down or think about what their answer is. And then the defining moment is through my iPhone. It's got like this light, right? Because it's hollow, and you put the light up against. It's like this beacon of light. So it's like this. The lantern. So I just put this thing up, and if it's just dud, the light's not there. It's it's the real one. I guess fake. And if it goes, yep, it's the fakey, everyone's like, yes, I've guessed it. So they're building up a tally, and it literally has become like that bit of fun, that few laughs. But as a result, like I said, I've had what started out being like the one or two, like a friend of a friend that kind of heard my story, or was at that party where Hugo got his nut out again, and he heard it, and then he went home and reached out to me saying, just want to let you know I've been diagnosed with TC, and but fortunately I got it early. I just want to say thank you for talking about it in the way that you do, because there is no way it would have prompted me to conduct an exam. I wouldn't have taken it as serious as I did, and I would have probably had to have, the follow-on years of treatment and recovery that I had to have. And that is a really powerful thing that was my first experience, and I didn't start this real life fake till probably, post my bowel cancer stuff. So it wasn't something I did initially. Initially, I was a bit embarrassed about it, to be honest. But years and years later, that was my first sort of gateway into the power of sharing your story and the power of what I've gone through and how it legitimately can save lives. And that was that moment of like, okay, it doesn't have to be somber conversations all the time. We can talk about it in a bit more of a jovial, humorous way that for blokes, it's that perfect icebreaker, and they can then feel open. That vulnerability is contagious. They can take their sort of the guard off and say, okay. And I've just had these chats organically with mates, and you're the same, mate, through the work you do, that that whole concept of being vulnerable and approachable, and all of a sudden you've got these mates that are opening up all this stuff to you because you're kind of that guy now. Because I've led by example almost. So it's a powerful part of my story that I'm proud of my fake nut. It's saved lives, quite literally. It's taught me a lot about my health, and for as long as I live, I'll always look at it in a way of being proud as opposed to looking at it as like this weird thing that I've got. So that's my fake nut, mate.
Thank you for sharing that. And like you said, the way that you speak about it and make it quite nonchalant and a bit of fun, I think opens up for so many people that like, yes, it's a big deal, but it's not a big deal. It's just something that's happened. You're better off to use it to inspire other people. Like you said, you've probably saved countless lives just from those conversations and those jokes that you've made. Can give people permission to be like, hey, it's all good. Like, you don't choose to have testicular cancer, so why be embarrassed about it? Use it as a way to encourage and inspire other people to go get checked to hopefully save lives, which I'm sure this conversation is going to save a life or two.
For sure, man. Like, the thing is, every bloke listening to this, we all have nuts. We all have balls. Some bigger, smaller, different than others, but we all have them. Same thing with women, who listen to it, they've all got breasts. Some different, they're all, that's the whole point of humans, that we all have differences, we're all unique, and it's the same with your testicles, that there's no reason why we can't talk about it. You shouldn't kind of be all a bit weird because Hugo's talking about nuts. And, the bowels are, we'll talk about this shortly, the bowels are even a more interesting one, because a lot of people get very funny about talking about bowel movements. And, I don't want to talk about pooing and how many times a day I poo. It's just weird chat. And I get it. If you're having a lunch at a restaurant, you don't want to start opening up about your bowel movements. But once again, time and a place. And that's what we're trying to do as the charity as well, is just to educate people, starting off when they're a little bit younger, to know that you actually can talk about these things in different ways.
Yeah, well, thank you for bringing light to this amazing part of the conversation. I want to keep moving through because there's so many more things I want to talk about. From that part of your chapter, removing your nut, there's two parts that I'm really intrigued about this story. What was the process of graduating? And you said the army supported you a lot, so I'd love to just kind of understand that. You had 6 months till you graduated. Dare I say that 6 months went completely different to what you're expecting it before you got your nuts checked and one of your balls removed. I'm sure it came with chemo and all this other stuff to try and stop the spread of the cancer. So two parts of the question. What was the recovery process like, and what was the finishing your education in the army and graduating like?
Yeah, so it was interesting. I put on hold the chemotherapy and the follow-on surgery, which definitely wasn't advised. But after I had that first remove the testicle, put the fakey in, They then wanted me to start chemo straight away. But at this stage, I probably had 4 months of proper, what I had to get through before I graduated. And for me, I knew that if I just sort of started the chemotherapy, I probably would have never graduated. I wouldn't have been able to graduate because I wouldn't have been able to hit off those key, milestones that you have to hit. So they put off the chemo until after I graduated. So that was also interesting because I never told anyone that I had cancer. I told my boss at the time, who was a captain, and I had to tell him because I'm off to all these appointments, and I told maybe 1 or 2 really close friends. But that was it. It wasn't like it was everyone knew that this is what Hugo had.
Because you didn't want the sympathy, or because you didn't want people to know?
A bit of both. I think at that stage I still felt a bit, in a weird way, I don't know why, embarrassed, different. Maybe the childhood stuff started coming back. I don't really know, but the other part was as well, I didn't want to be known as like, not that anyone would obviously think that, but like I graduated as the cancer kid that, got a bit of a leg up and all that. So I'd spent so much work to get to that stage, and I wanted to do it my own merit, and I didn't want the cancer side to be the reason that I graduated. So I remember I clicked pause, had cancer through your body, was still going outfield, going to PT, doing the shoots, doing the army stuff.
Were you starting to feel like shit at this stage?
Still not. I was still going out on weekends and still having some beers, and there weren't like other symptoms that were coming. At this stage, I had the fakey in, so I guess that was gone. But the other stuff, I didn't notice anything else, and I still was having to have regular checkups, the blood work, and clearly if I had some blood, my markers went through the roof. They would have said, "Mate, we got to go." Mm-hmm. So they weren't negligent. It's not like, I'll see you in 6 months. They were constantly checking still, but I was still able to graduate, which was a really important thing for me. Mm-hmm. I earned that right to graduate, and there's this powerful photo of my twin brother Max, and I'm in my full whites and the sword and the graduation hat in Canberra, graduation day. Max is next to me, and it's like, boom, graduated, young lieutenant. What a proud moment. Graduation dinner that night. I remember everyone sort of going out, having the port, having the big nights with family and friends, and instead of that being the start of a long military career in your life, for me it was a weird, bittersweet feeling, because literally 6 days after that, went back to Adelaide, and that's back in my hometown, and that's where I literally was hooked up, St Andrew's Hospital, boom, day one of chemotherapy, 6 days after I just graduated, and then boom, that was me for the next 4 or so months. That, obviously army hit pause, I was medically downgraded. They were fantastic with it, but I focused on naturally the chemo, the treatment. Yeah. I'd be in hospital for a week, 2 weeks of recovery. This went on for sort of 4 months or so. My hair did all fall out. That's the chemo cocktail that they give you for testicular cancer. It's highly effective, but it's very intense, and you become very sick. And I remember couldn't really do anything, hardly get off the couch. You're constantly nauseous. You look like a cancer patient. Like I said, you see on the TVs, I did look like a cancer patient. And for me, that went on for a good sort of 6 months by the time I had the final round. And then unfortunately, they still found some signs of cancer, or more so sort of dysplasia, some precancerous cells that they thought would eventually spread and remain. So I had to have what's called retroperitoneal lymph node dissection, and that was the big sort of 10-hour operation. They only do 1 or 2 a year. They're pretty rare for testicular cancer. Usually chemo by itself gets it all. For me, I had to have this follow-on my whole life. I've always been the one that sort of, that's usually unusual. Usually that's kind of all you need. I've heard that before. But anyway, I had to have this major surgery, which was, ICU, recovery, getting physically fit, mentally fit. But I remember as soon as I went through all of that, I had this first follow-up scan that confirmed I was cancer-free, and there was no sign or no evidence of disease, NED they call it. And I remember thinking, shit, how good is that? And I was young, and I've just beaten it. And it's almost like from that point on, I knew that, recovery, rehab, I'll get through that. But I'm like, I've beaten it, I'm done. I can put that part of my story.
Go back to the army now and focus on my career.
Posted into the unit I was at. Still had caveats, and I was still downgraded, and I still had to... it took work my way back to full health, but all that side of things was almost like I could click resume and put that behind me, and then it was like the 6 month checkups, the annual checkups, the every 2 years checkup, and then once I hit that 5 years,
have you been sharing it with anyone by this stage after a year or two? More people started to find out who you were like back at the army with. Like, where'd you go? Like,
I started to. I remember early days of chemo. Speaking of that, I still wasn't. I don't think social media definitely wasn't as big as it is now. So maybe things were different, but I also wasn't as open as I was now. And I remember I didn't openly share it on social media. I didn't just start messaging, old schoolmates. And there was this 21st. I was still bald, and I remember thinking, I looked in the mirror thinking like I was so embarrassed in how I looked. If I left the house, I'd put the beanie on or the hat. Like I thought everyone was just staring at me going, oh my gosh, look at that guy. Like, even though that wasn't true, we know that we can be our harshest critics. And I went to this 21st, and I remember standing next to an old schoolmate, Stefan, and the speeches were going on, and I literally had my blue blazer, little pocket square, trying to look the part. And I was thinking, like, everyone was looking at me. And we were just chatting, and Stefan's like, how you been, mate? And I saw you graduated, like, congrats, how's the army going? And I'm like, yeah, look, it's been good, mate, but unfortunately, as you can tell, like, I'm going through chemo. I was diagnosed with testicular cancer. And he was, like, shocked. He was like, what do you mean, mate? That's what? And he had no idea. I'm like, well, like, pretty obvious, isn't it? He's like, mate, I honestly thought you were doing the whole, like, being in the army, graduated, the skinhead, real tough guy, like, looked the part. And that's was a real powerful moment for me where the self-judgment. That self-judgment. And here I was thinking that everyone either just assumed I was a cancer patient or they were just judging me. And it was that moment of how we can always judge ourselves much more harshly than anyone else. Whether it's, I remember, I used to have a bit of acne or whatever, like a lot of teenagers go through. And, you think that you've got a few of these pimples and everyone's just like, oh my God, look at that thing on Cooper's face, even though that doesn't happen. And it was that moment of realization that, like, hang on, what am I doing here? Like, it was a bit of a defining moment for me where I realized, like, I don't need to firstly hide behind this, and I don't need to necessarily be embarrassed about this. And it's an important part of that sort of started to shift more when I then started to share it more and be open with it, and started small and testicular cancer forums and online or whatever, and then that was when I first got involved with Movember. And then I've I've been involved up until this year. I've had to step back as an ambassador this year just because I've got my own charity, and I just can't you can't commit to everything. But I've been ambassador for them for a number of years, and I've been hugely supportive of what they do and what Trav, the founders, built over the years. So it's it was sort of the starting point for me. Movember was the starting point as far as working for other charities and actually going to an event and talking and sharing your story. And here I am many years later.
Yeah, wow. There's so many things, and thank you so much for sharing that part of your story. And we said at the start, you were like, "All right, where do we want to get to?" And I was like, "Don't worry, we'll work our way through." And now I'm like, "There's so many more things I still want to talk about." And we've still got plenty of time. I'm conscious of your time. You got a baby upstairs.
No, that's right, mate.
I really want to talk about 5-year checkup, which is kind of the milestone for cancer. Then finding out you've got bowel cancer, and I really want to talk about Teddy and your kind of views around if you were ever going to have kids, especially after your second cancer diagnosis, and then let's start with the bowel cancer.
Yeah, mate. So 5-year all clear scan.
27. 27 years old.
26 at that stage. Yep. 26. I'd been pretty well for a few years now. It was just sort of the follow-up.
Building up in the army.
Checkups. I got medically upgraded, which essentially means you're fit for deployment.
Yeah.
And then I remember this 5-year scan. It's quite significant because it essentially means the chance of relapse is non-existent. You're in complete remission, which anyone who's had going through experienced cancer in the family will be well aware that 5-year mark is quite significant. You sort of circle that in the calendar, and it's literally like you shake your oncologist's hand, never see you again. Wow, that's a good chapter for the book one day. Like you can move on in your life. And then I remember the cherry on the cake was getting that 5-year clear scan and thinking, and we got posted to Brisbane and thinking like it doesn't hang over you, the baggage of cancer, the checkups, the doctor appointments, the bloods, the this, the that, the anxiety of what if it relapses. So for me, just getting that news, being posted to Brisbane, it was like that, boom, like that
Next chapter.
Next chapter in your life. Click resume.
Yeah.
Here we go. And I remember the moment well. We celebrated that moment as anyone should. It was a lot to get to that stage. I met Amber probably just after I finished chemo. Hair started growing back, and she was a nurse, and she was just so empathetic from the start. And
Did you meet her in hospital?
No, as I always say, it'd be great if it was be great for the book and the keynotes if she was my oncology nurse. Imagine that, and it's just
maybe it's a conflict of interest. Maybe she can't do that with a patient.
That would be cool. Imagine that, the ultimate romance love story. It was honestly at a bar in Adelaide, having a few drinks, a friend of a friend. This is Amber, and that was when I was a more open with my story, and I was starting to talk about it. And I remember straight from the start, she was asking questions, and she was interested
straight away.
And I was
judgment as a nurse, she's probably seen it. It's not.
And she was generally
curious,
interested, as opposed to a lot of people were like, "Oh, okay. Did you want another drink?" And it's almost dismiss it. Yeah. It's well, hang on, this is pretty big for me. So I think that was part of it, and we've been together for over 10 years now. But the point is, we celebrated that moment, moved to Brisbane, and even got lined up for a deployment because the unit I was at was a deployable unit. And even that was kind of exciting to think,
Afghanistan potentially.
Back then it would have been one of those Middle East deployments. And I thought, how cool is this? My mates have started doing that. You go overseas for 6 to 8 months. You can actually do what you've been trained to do overseas. And then it was exciting. It's exciting. I was fit, I was healthy. Deployment, moved to Brisbane, new city, away from Adelaide. And then I often say, it was looking back on it, given where I am now, that was the last time where I was really just carefree in a health sense, happy, and had the ultimate sense of freedom. I didn't have all this baggage. And for me, that was something that I haven't really experienced much since. And that was, back in then was 2018. So it's been a long time, and that feeling that I had, that freedom, that happiness, was pretty short-lived. And literally a couple of months after that, being on top of the world, my bowel started playing up. And now, we spoke earlier about how that wasn't unusual for me as a kid.
Do you want to explain that just for someone right now if they've got what is bowels playing up? But thing, kind of just.
Well, and once again, different for everyone. Yeah. So I always say, for me, it wasn't unusual for even throughout those adult years for me to something set me off or have a bit of diarrhea. But when I say playing up, sort of worse than my normal.
Yeah.
So someone else who's normal, who's got an iron stomach that's never had the runs and never had the bloody gastro bug, and they get a little bit of diarrhea, for them, they probably think, oh my God, what's happening?
Yeah.
I was kind of used to that.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm talking about getting up during the night, urgency, going, 5-6 times a day, bit of abdominal pain. Yeah. These symptoms that weren't my normal. Yeah. And I remember thinking, hang on, that's weird. We'd be talking oh shit, I got to go to the toilet. Not just oh, I got the runs today. This was worse than my normal. Yeah. And I always say, my normal is different to your normal, and everyone listening has got their own version of that. So it's important to know what your normal is. And then the 2-week rule, if things play up and that goes on for more than 2 weeks, i.e. that rash has been there for 2 weeks, my bowels are playing up for more than 2 weeks, this lump that shouldn't be there has been there for more than 2 weeks. There's something just my hearing's been going on for 2 weeks, these headaches, just these migraines, that's hang on, this has been going on for more than 2 weeks. The medical guidance, and it's usually a great sort of indication to say, you know what, I'm going to book in to see a GP. So in other words, you don't have that panic when you've had too many beers on the weekend and your bowels are playing up and you go, oh, I heard Hugo's story, I'm going to rush off to my doctor because it's more to say if it's been going for a shortish time frame. For me, it went on, knowing that everything I'd been through, I was pretty proactive. Yeah. If anything, Amber used to laugh and say I was a hypochondriac, which now it's pretty justified that I am. And went to the doctor. Given my history, he ran a few tests when I asked about my history of when I was a kid and IBD and all this sort of stuff, and obviously the testicular cancer side. He sent me off to a gastroenterologist, had a colonoscopy, and so for those who have you had a colonoscopy?
I haven't, I probably should.
No, for so for those who haven't had a colonoscopy, it's
I've done a colonic once.
Yeah, well, it's the bowel cleanse of it, as you can imagine, the day before, especially the night before. A camera goes up your bum. You're having a sleep, by the way, so you can't.
Oh, they put you out for.
It's a twilight anaesthetic. So you literally, it's the best 15, 20-minute power nap you'll ever have. Like, you're completely out. You're not like, geez, what's the doc doing down there?
Colonic, you're not. You sit there, you're like, oh.
Yeah. So
you feel the water.
Yeah. So like, that would probably be more of a weird sensation for a colonoscopy. It's the bowel prep that just clears you out.
So how does the colonoscopy work? Say I want to go and get a colonoscopy. What's my process?
So typically, if you've either got a family history of bowel cancer, and if anyone listening to this has, tell your GP that. Yeah. If your bowels have been playing up for a long time, things aren't right, tell your GP that. They're often the two biggest triggers. Yeah. Or the third one, if you've taken a bowel screening kit, which you can order online, you get them sent for free when you're 45 onwards now, but you can just order one tonight online. It costs about $35 or something, and that comes back for positive, which means you've got blood detected in your stool, which can often be microscopic. So like often if you go to do a bowel movement,
red, but it's,
if you ever see blood and red, that's a red flag. Go straight to the doctor. But if your kind of bowels are pretty normalish and you do these screening kits and it comes back positive, it means you've got blood in your stool. You'll then register your GP when you fill the form out. That will always trigger a colonoscopy. So there are a few things that will often trigger a colonoscopy.
Can you request one though? If you're like, say, for instance, like I'm 31 now, I've never had one. You know, I partied and drank a lot through my late teens, early 20s. Is that another reason? Like I was saying, my friend at the start of this episode said he got one recently and had a bunch of things that they cleaned up because of it, which is now way better for him. So, or should I at 31 have got one if I've got a, really healthy, blood's come back quite good always whenever I do stuff.
So it's a really good question. People do ask that. Now, I will say, if you are typically very healthy, you look after yourself, you have no symptoms at all, you've got great bowel habits, you haven't had a history of bowel cancer, generally speaking, you've even had a screening kit, you've even been that proactive and that's been negative, generally speaking, no, you don't need to go out and get a colonoscopy. Because it still is an anaesthetic and you do go under, there technically are some slight risks with any anaesthetic. So, and if you're going through by private means, you can get one. And they can be a bit expensive. They can be expensive. You might be out of pocket a little bit of money. Public means, you'll be waiting for a long time. But if you're fortunate enough to have private health insurance and you do end up having one, that's the other thing to consider. If you're not in a financial situation, you're just doing it because to consider that. Okay. But what I will say, if you're proactive with your health enough that you do want to get one and you think, you know what, I'm just, I really want to be diligent and I do want to get one, and you've got a great peace of mind, great GP, you're in your 30s now, you've heard my story, and the prevalence of young people getting diagnosed now with bowel cancer is alarming. It's just skyrocketed. Then, of course, there are ways you can request it. If you've got a good GP, you chat to him about it, he books you in, you can. All I suggest is talk to your GP about it, tell them reasons why you want to have one, be upfront with everything else been going on. And more often than not, then they'll be, okay, if you want one, we can definitely put one in for you.
So you get one done, put under.
Get one done, put under. Literally, camera goes up the bum. You obviously can't feel it. And it's the best way to have a look at gut inflammation, polyps, anything going on in there. Best way to look. Scans, everything like that. You can't get that same level of what a camera can. And so if you've got, camera's gone up Cooper's bum, looks around and goes pristine colon, no polyps, no signs of inflammation, I'll take some photos for you. You'll wake up pretty dazed and out of it. You'll get the best bloody sandwich and biscuit because you've just been fasting for 2 days. Cup of tea, feeling great. And I'll come up to you and say, Cooper, mate, here's your printout. Here are some fancy little photos of your inside of your colon if you're interested. All looking pretty good, mate. No reason for you to have any other tests, not until you start reaching that age of having the every couple of years or whatever.
But that's not what they
happy
said
days.
to you.
But that isn't what happened for me. So I went in thinking that, or at worst, having a bit of inflammation, saying, "Oh, mate, you got some bowel disease that's active," or "Oh, I remember when I was a kid, I had that." I was not thinking cancer. And I went in, had the colonoscopy, woke up feeling great, bit out of it.
Bunch of doctors.
And that's when Terry, my gastroenterologist, came up to me with that printout. And I've still got a photo of the exact printout. And he said, mate, so look, you do have a bit of inflammation. But more concerning at this stage is there were a couple of nasty polyps. And now polyps are these things that can vary in size, that can often be inside your colon or your bowel. And often they're harmless. But
they're like burst. They have cancer
sometimes they
cells.
can develop to be cancerous. And if you've got enough polyps, and they find that in Cooper's colonoscopy, they'll almost always say, mate, we'll see you in 12 months, we'll see you in 24 months, because you are at a higher risk if you've got polyps. I had only a few polyps. Some people have hundreds of polyps. I've heard stories of people with hundreds of polyps when they've gone in there. It's like, holy shit, it's like a minefield.
Yeah.
For me, I only had a few, but unfortunately a couple of them were at a concerning size and they looked a bit nasty. And he'd done enough of these to know that this doesn't look too good. But he said, mate, no reason to panic.
Taking some samples.
I've literally, they burned them off whilst doing the colonoscopy. They burned them off, sent them off for a histology biopsy. We'll get the results back. But hey, in the meantime, let's book you in for 2 weeks. We'll talk about what else the inflammation's doing. And I thought, oh, okay, cool. I used to go through this as a kid. Yeah. Used to have colonoscopies as a kid. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Went to work the next day, dressed in my army uniform, typing away at my desk. And then I got a call from Terry's receptionist. And that's when she said, Hugo, the results came back from yesterday's colonoscopy. And I thought, oh, yeah, that's all right. What does that mean? Like, I'm due to see Terry in 2 weeks. And she said, no, Terry wants you to come in today. And as soon as you hear that, I remember thinking, it's almost like my mind went back to the testicular cancer, the checkups, the surveillance,
oh my God,
everything came back. And I literally experienced 2 months. That was 2 months. 2 months after getting the 5-year all clear scan. So I've had a clear scan, which obviously doesn't go inside you looking at polyps, but everything else was a clear scan to say, mate, clean bill of health, all the best with the rest of your life. 2 months later, colonoscopy, polyps, doctor needs to see that day. And straight away I thought, this isn't good. Amber went to me with the appointment. She's a nurse. She just finished a shift at the hospital. And I remember she even said, when I told her, she was like, knowing her, what she knew, she was like, this isn't good. But then we both were in the car like, so how was your day, honey? Like, raining outside, like just pretending nothing was happening. Reading the magazines in the waiting room, like just trying to distract yourself.
Can I just pause right there and just ask, had you guys been talking about kids before the second cancer diagnosis?
No, we hadn't. No, look, we were still youngish, like 26. Amber would have been 24, 25. Yeah. Okay. So not at that stage. Okay. And I think because we only really had a couple months of being healthy. Yeah, being healthy. Healthy, if that makes sense. It's almost like, but I will say, earlier before I got the chemo and the testicle out, my mum at the time, I was a single bloke. Having a kid, that's like 20 years away for me, mum. Yeah. She did say I'd look at that, and I did back then go get some fertility done and some stuff put away before all the chemo and stuff. Yeah, cool. And now I've since updated it and put some new samples in or whatever, but I still have frozen sperm today. Yeah, so cool. Amber and I knew that we did have that for whatever reason.
Yeah, because I was just thinking pre-chemo and stuff, did it affect your sperm?
No, and it can...
Conversation for another time.
I know, mate. I told you, mate.
We could go for hours.
I'm telling you, you asked before when we were chatting, and I can't wait to read your book. I'm sure when this is released, it's probably going to be out, right? People will be reading it.
Pretty soon.
Let's
keep going with your story.
No, sorry, but you did ask me about would you release a book one day? And that's when I was saying, fucking hell, where do I start? Yeah. But I was got the call to go in. And then Terry called us in and he basically just said, remember once again, you remember these moments well. Amber had her hand on my knee and he turned that computer monitor around and said, Amber, Hugo, unfortunately, you've got bowel cancer or colon cancer. Look, we have detected some cancer in here. And he's like pointing to this screen and talking. You know when you watch those movies and everything becomes like you can't hear anything. You're like sitting there. I kind of experienced that out-of-body experience. I remember sort of sitting there like almost a bit numb and I wasn't really listening to what he was saying. I just heard this, you've got bowel cancer. And it's like almost like PTSD in a way, like it brought back all that stuff. And I remember saying to him, when I came with it a bit, are you sure you've got the right person? And he's like, unfortunately I do. And I'm like, I just had a 5-year-old clear scan for testicular cancer and blood work. And he's like, unfortunately, this is an entirely new cancer. So it wasn't like a relapse. People often, when they hear that you've had cancer twice, they think, it might be a relapse of my testicular cancer that's in another area. This was a new primary cancer. So it was from a completely new cancer world. They were entirely separate. My testicular cancer days were behind me. This was an entirely new cancer. I'm sitting here at 26, 2 months after I'd just been given the 5-year-old clear scan, being told I had an aggressive type of bowel cancer that was starting to spread beyond the bowel wall. He already booked me in to see a surgeon, remove part of my bowel. It happens quick. And I remember in that moment, it was a lot to take in, obviously. We were both silent. Amber was probably asking more questions than I was, but he said this comment to me. He said, in a strange way, and he knew my history, in a strange way, testicular cancer saved your life. And hearing that at the time, I probably didn't realise the significance of what he was saying. And the work I'm doing now with my charity, early detection, and essentially what he's saying is if it wasn't for experiencing what I went through as an ignorant young 20-year-old who realised, holy shit, that little frozen pea-sized lump spread all through my body.
The gut thing, you would have just left it
for sure.
longer.
As a 26-year-old, I remember I'd always had gut issues.
Yeah.
There was no blood. I was going to work. Like, I wasn't debilitating.
Yeah.
I would have left it for longer, which tragically is what a lot of young people in their 20s are now doing. They're either leaving it because they think I'm too young, or they're getting turned away from doctors who are saying, oh, here's some gastro stop, and they're seeing like 3 or 4 doctors, and it's not until they've got a tumour growing in there and they're shitting blood before they finally have a colonoscopy and they go up to say, it's spread all through your body, you've got stage 4, 5-year survival rates are less than 10%, you're classified as terminal. Next steps, and you're like in your 20s going, what? So for me to hear that, yes, this was a lot, but I gave myself a fighting chance because I got it early.
Yeah.
And I'll always be grateful, not for what I'd been through, but grateful for what I learnt, grateful for the experiences of what testicular cancer taught me. Because if it wasn't for testicular cancer and learning the importance of early detection, I would not have been there being told I had bowel cancer, and I probably wouldn't be here today chatting to you. Because like a lot of young people, I would have, waited till it was too late, and I would have been having a very different conversation. So it's a really defining moment for me where I thought that, yes, I'm still facing the collateral damage and the aftermath of the dozen or so open bowel surgeries and the treatments and the lack of bowel, but I'm still here. I'm still here to share my story. I've got a fighting chance to be here for years to come. A lot of people find themselves in a position where they are told that they have cancer far too late and there is nothing they can do. And so it's something that I always am grateful for, and I often do reflect on. And that very pivotal moment in my life at 26. But it was still a lot. And like I said, he'd already booked me in and would kind of get through the next sort of part of that life, but basically left that appointment, broke down in tears. I remember calling my parents and my dad in particular, and could hear him get really emotional. And it was also that realization that something like cancer, how much it impacts more than just you. It impacts family and friends and loved ones and, Amber and Teddy upstairs. And I feel like, and I felt like, that I've caused my family a lot of pain. Being that, constantly being unwell and the sick one, and them always having to drop everything and be by my side. And in that moment when Dad said, it's all right, dude, I'll catch the next plane to Brisbane. And it's a lot to take on. When you're already going through so much, to then feel the guilt that you're now putting on your loved ones probably isn't spoken about enough, and what that does to your mental state. And it still is a lot to this day, that the guilt that I feel that sometimes I put on Amber, this upcoming hospital visit that I've now put on Teddy, it's a lot to manage. And that was the real start of my decline in my mental health, was the fact that I always felt like I had to be, and sometimes I still do, that positive person all the time. Geez, mate, you're so inspiring. Like, I don't know how you do it. You just get up and you keep going. And you're like, yep. And you know what? Yep, I'll keep going. And then the more you do of that, you think that you have to be that person all the time. And then I remember throughout those first years of the surgeries, and I had to remove a big chunk of bowel, and then I had all these treatments, and I had to go back and eventually remove the entire large bowel, colon, rectum. And there's this time in hospital I vividly remember, and Amber would come in, I had the tubes up the nose, I couldn't really eat much, and she would bring this frozen watermelon. And I remember as soon as she would come in, I'd put this almost this fake smile on, and pooping, I'd call her, it was a nickname, conversation at the time, basically what she was called as a kid. But she would come in and I'd have this sort of smile and eat this watermelon, and I'd see her, and she's looking really nice, and how's your day? And then often as soon as she would leave, I'd just burst into tears. And I did this for so long. The nurses often saw it, but I was so unhappy, and that's when I got very good at putting on the mask, I would take, all the painkillers, the strong painkillers, I'd numb up on them to try and escape all that pain. And as soon as family and friends would visit me, there's Hugo, the smiling, positive guy all the time. And that was kind of my default. And that was really draining. As anyone knows that they try and do that for long enough, there's eventually a time where you just go, I can't do it anymore. And then there was some of those times in hospital where I didn't want to do it anymore. And, you're in a pretty dark place. And I guess it's the realisation now of reflection, and it took me to this day. I still need some help with it, and I spoke to my psychologist 2 days ago, and I'm still getting better at communicating, opening up to Amber, but it's taken a lot of work to get to that place, to realise that when you go through all this stuff, all that physical stuff, something like cancer,
all this as well, the last thing I want to put on her is, I'm depressed.
Exactly.
But you have every right to be.
Exactly. So it's hard, and I do empathise with people that are going through really challenging times when they still need to be that pillar of strength for their kids, their family, their partner, and their inner working, they're struggling themselves. It's something I've really struggled with a lot over the years, and I'm sure people listening to this have had their own version of that, are probably nodding along thinking, shit, I can relate to that. But that being said, I certainly couldn't do it without Amber. She's been that one that's, I often say she's the one that knows the behind the scenes and what goes on outside of the, I'm pretty open with social media, but even then you don't share everything. Yeah. But she knows that, what she's witnessed and watched with me, the struggles that I've had, I have not been that positive, resilient person all the time, and that's okay. I don't have to be. Yeah. And I've only just started to get better at realising that. I don't have to always be I'll be right. No, this surgery is going to improve my quality of life coming up. And you know what? I'm looking forward to it. I'll be good to go. I can actually say, I am scared of this surgery and I don't want to live with a bag again. And it is traumatic going back and they're experiencing all this again, but that's okay. I've got the support. I'll get through it. I'm getting better at talking about it.
Well, thank you for being so open on here. And the last thing I just want to talk about is Teddy. How was it finding out you're going to become a dad? How much hope did that sort of bring to your life, and how much hope does that bring it to every day for you now?
Yeah, look, mate, Teddy's, as I said at the start of this podcast, like what am I grateful for? It's hard not to be grateful for him, but over those years of the treatment recoveries, the finally getting to a stage where I was cancer-free, and then it's now I just have to live with the aftermath of what I'd gone through.
Taken out to
survive, literally the dozen or so surgeries and the missing parts of your bowel and emergency surgeries, and constantly being back in hospital, and the daily pain I'm experiencing now and the upcoming surgery. Amongst all that was that moment of, we both wanted to be parents one day. And I think when you go through this stuff, it kind of, fast forwards your timeline a bit, where it makes you grateful for the smaller things, and you realise how precious life is. And I know that Amber, was going to be an amazing mum one day. We really wanted to be parents one day. And I think in the back of my mind, I was always worried about, what if we don't fall pregnant straight away? All these surgeries and treatments and everything I've got, surely that's taken its toll. And
will having one ball change anything?
So initially, but then for some people, it can depend, but one for a lot of people is all you need. It can do the heavy lifting when its brother's gone. It can kind of say, I'm the bloody man in charge now. I need to work through this. And we did try for a year or so. We got to the stage of starting to see doctors or whatever, and think about, we might have to use Hugo's frozen sperm, which I was grateful I had, which, once again, ignorant is bliss. I did underestimate how many people, I know you've got a personal connection with that, but how many people struggle with conceiving. Fertility, I didn't know that as a bloke. I thought, a couple of my mates thought, the first time we tried and it was ovulation day, we conceived, and geez, mate, as soon as you stop bloody using the bloody condom, or your wife's not on the pill, it just happens. And you hear those stories, and certainly as a bloke, that's what I heard. So we thought this would happen. And then it went on longer than we thought. That being said, as soon as we were starting to think down that pathway, and doctors saying that, look, Hugo, it might be something you have to look at, which we thought, okay, we're ready for that. It was one of those moments where we weren't looking at the ovulation calendars and we weren't tracking anything. And in fact, we didn't even expect it. It was only because Amber was going back to Adelaide for a friend's hen's party or something like that. And she thought, and I'd got very used to seeing pregnancy tests and the no lines or whatever. And then before, it was like 5 a.m, going to the airport, she thought, you know what, I'm just going to do one because I don't want to go and smash myself for a weekend. I'm just going to do one. I thought, okay, you do what you got to do. I'm going to finish packing my bag. And that's when I came down to the kitchen and just saw this thing on the kitchen bench, and I was literally about to throw it in the bin because I'd done that so often. And I flipped it around. I'm like, Amber, what's this line on the pregnancy test? I'm like, hang on, what? And then she ran down and we went, oh my God, the Uber's also here in 5 minutes. We got to go. And then we had to follow on one at the airport, the digital one that said you're pregnant. We're both like sitting on the plane listening to like pregnancy podcasts. And it was a really super exciting time. And it was a great time because we'd been through so much shit, as you've just heard in the last hour or so of everything we'd gone through. It was something that was so positive, and we were both just had this bigger smile on our faces, and we told our parents initially, and just the excitement that came with it. And I think that was an amazing feeling. And then eventually Teddy came to this world, and
healthy pregnancy
and
healthy
baby. Look, Amber went through a few bits and pieces, pre-eclampsia, whatever. He came 3 weeks early, but all in all went well. Teddy was healthy. And I often say to people, I know it sounds cliche, but I mean every single word of it. I would happily trade everything I'd gone through and everything I'll continue to go through with my health and the challenges of it means that Teddy grows up being healthy, and he has to this point, touch wood, and lives a long, happy, healthy life. I'd trade that in a heartbeat. And I think it's not until you become a parent you can kind of mean that. And I truly do. And it's that ultimate distraction. It's the realization that there's someone on this world that's more important than you, and you just want to do everything you can for him. And when I'm in hospital, which I've been in even the last 2 months, I've had about 3 or 4 hospital admissions, and he comes and visits me, and as soon as I see him and he goes, Dad, and starts to babble Dad and run up to me and jump in bed with me, it's like, how can that not bring you joy? And I remember when we initially, during the pregnancy, we were going to have Teddy, it was something I was anxious about in a way, because I thought, how the fuck am I going to be a present father and a good dad when I'm still going through this, and Amber has to now look after me and a baby. Like, it was actually causing a lot of stress, but how wrong I was. It's done the complete opposite. It's made us realize there's something that we can be truly grateful for, someone that gives us this distraction, like I said, and then even coming up with these further challenges I have, someone that I know will always be there for me, and I hope that I'll be there for him for a long time, mate. So love him dearly, and can't wait for the many years to come, and the many more memories we'll create.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch it, and can't wait to continue our friendship and watch your story grow and support 25 Stay Alive wherever I can, because I know the power of what you're doing and the lives that it's going to save. And obviously I feel quite altruistic myself with what I'm doing, but I see what you're doing is just so powerful, and have the lived experience that you do, and to turn that into a powerful story is just phenomenal. And you are like by far probably the best keynote speaker I've ever seen. So if anyone's listening right now, you have a workplace with, over 50 staff, over 100 staff, there is going to be someone in your workplace that will hear Hugo's story, and it might save their life, it might save their partner's life, it might save their kids, their grandparents' life. Get him in to come and speak at your workplace, because it'll be something that you'll always be grateful for, because I guarantee, even if it's not your workplace, the next workplace is going to have someone whose life's going to be saved. So check out Hugo. I know you're on Saxton Speakers. I'll leave in the show notes. I don't know if you've got a website, but I'll definitely leave 25 Stay Alive. I'm sure through the charity people can maybe come in and get workplace checks. I think it's a great one. School stuff as well. I could see you doing some amazing things at schools, which will be just so powerful to, like we keep saying, save a lot of lives. So as much as I want to go more into 25 Stay Alive, we've had an amazing conversation here. I will leave in the show notes everything about 25 Stay Alive. Go check out the collab hoodie we've got. Go check out the merch that you guys do. I do finish the podcast with the same question. I can't wait to hear your answer to this. So what does being a good human mean to Hugo Toovey?
Being a good human to me, I think it's not since being a father. I've spoken about this a bit, but doing something for someone else, whether it's my son, whether it's someone I don't even know, whether it's a friend, doing something for someone else in a positive way and expecting nothing in return. I think often in this world, we always expect to get something from something, whether it's a relationship, partnership, a work, anything we do in life, it's ultimately a transactional, and I know you're big on that, mate. Like, what am I going to get out of this? And for me, whether it's the volunteer work I've done over the years or helping someone that I don't even know and I've expected nothing in return, that's often what's given me the most joy. So I think to me, being a good human is, if more people in the world were nicer to other people or did good to other people in the pure sense of just that's the good thing and the right thing to do and they didn't expect something back in return, I think that will go a long way to creating some better people and a better world, mate. So I think for me that's massive and it's something I definitely try and do.
That's so beautifully put, and it just kind of unlocked something in me just then. It's like, if you give with expecting something in return, you miss out on the best part about giving, which is like the feel good and the chemicals. Whereas if you give, expect something in return, don't get it in return, you miss out on the best part about giving, which is feeling good about it. So giving without expectation is true kindness, and that's where you get the positive feelings because you did it with the mindset of, I don't need anything in return. I've already got what I wanted out of this, which was to do something nice.
And I know, and if you haven't tried it, start simple, but you're spot on. When you do it for the first time or you do it a little bit more, you do realise it. You go, geez, almost you start doing it for selfish reasons, which is a completely fine thing to do because it does make you feel better.
Exactly, and that's what I kind of wrote about in my book. I'm like, it's this weird like flip side of like, don't do it because you get the feeling of feeling good, but just do it, but then you get it anyway. So it's like this weird balance. But I'll give you one. If you're listening right now, next time you pay for your petrol, stop, look the person in the eye and say, thanks so much. I hope you have a great day. 5 seconds. Watch their face light up, then watch you light up. And it's like that interaction that we do once a week and usually just tap our card and pay and run out. Hey, you've got a moment. And every day to do
different
something
to
like
the barista where you have
you
stand there, but you're right. Usually there's a bit more conversation. I didn't think about that, old mate at the servo. You're often in a rush. You just tap your card. I must admit, I'm looking back. Hang on, the last few times I've filled the cup, I probably haven't stood there and said, "How's your day going, mate? Thanks for that." So. I like that,
There's
mate.
moments all the time. Well, mate,
good way to finish on.
So, thank you so much. I'm going to leave everything in the show notes all about your incredible work. Looking forward to continue to collaborate and build a friendship, watch you continue to be an amazing dad and, continue to change people's lives. So, we finally got it done.
No, mate. And Cooper, thank you for your time, mate. Coming to my home, I admire you greatly with the work you do. And hearing that from you means a lot. And the fact that, you're already looking at supporting the charity through the collab with the hoodie. Hopefully, it's the start of a long friendship and relationship, mate. But thanks for having me on.
You're an absolute legend. Thanks for coming, Hugo Toovey.